The Barrio Azteca gang was born in the prison of Texas and served as armed support for the Juárez Cartel. However, it has evolved and is now responsible for local drug trafficking in Juárez. The organization of the group has consolidated and has gained members of both sides of the border, currently having the necessary conditions to make the leap to large-scale transnational organized crime, competing with other cartels. Welcome! Before we begin, remember to like and share these fascinating stories with your friends. Today, the Barrio Azteca. The Barrio Azteca gang, also known as Los Aztecas, first appeared in the prison system of El Paso, Texas in 1986. These groups began to expand in 1996, partly motivated by the increase in deportation of Mexican criminals in the United States, and by the early 2000s, the groups already controlled the prison of Chihuahua. The growth of areas taken in Mexico is believed to be due to the distinctive international nature of the area. The El Paso and Ciudad Juárez area is in many ways a single community, with families, friends, businesses, and even gangs united by the same urban sprawl. According to the DEA estimates, in 2013, the group had over 5,000 members in the Juárez area alone and about 3,000 throughout the United States. Moreover, by 2018, the Texas Department of Public Safety indicated that the numbers of members range from 1,000 to 2,500. According to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Barrio Azteca also has members in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, and Texas authorities have also reported the presence of Barrio Azteca as far as New Mexico. Since March 2015, the organization's main leader has been Eduardo Ravelo, who was on the FBI 10 Most Wanted list until his arrest in July 2018. He led his group from Juarez, constantly moving across the border with the United States. Ravelo is attributed to a large part of the violence that had plagued the border state of Juarez. Many of the other Barrio Azteca leaders are incarcerated in the United States, from where they use phones, emails, and encrypted messages to communicate with members abroad. According to a former member, the El Cerese prison in Juarez has also been a significant hub for arms and drug smuggling operations. Barrio Azteca began collaborating with the Juárez Cartel of Mexico in its operation, becoming a key player during the battle between this cartel and the Sinaloa cartel for control of the city of Juárez in 2008. Since then, La Línea, the armed branch of the Juárez cartel, has recruited members of Barrio Azteca to confront the Sinaloans, resulting in the death or detention of many gang members. The group also provides support to the Juárez cartel in human trafficking, drug trafficking, and the acquisition of weapons and vehicles. In 2010, members of Barrio Azteca allegedly ended the life of 15 young people at a party. Additionally, in the same year, they carried out the assassination of a United States consulate official, her partner, and another official spouse in Ciudad Juárez. These attacks generated strong pressure for the United States government, which in March 2011 issued arrest warrants against 35 members of Barrio Azteca for illegal activities such as extortion, murder, drug trafficking, and money laundering. 10 of them were particularly charged in connection with the consulate case. All of the accused have been detained and 30 of them have been convicted. Of the remaining 5, one was convicted after trial, one committed suicide before his trial concluded, and 3 are awaiting extradition from Mexico. Arturo Gallegos Castrillon, the mastermind behind the murders, was sentenced to life imprisonment in April 2014. Despite the efforts of the United States to combat them, the group appears to have regained strength and feels very evident power in Juarez. According to the United States Department of Justice, Barrio Azteca is financed through the transportation of illegal substances across the border. Additionally, it controls the local distribution of substances, extortion networks, and human trafficking in Juarez. It uses other smaller local groups as a workforce and charges other criminals for the rights to operate in its territory. It is estimated that drug distribution accounts for more than half of the gang's income. Barrio Azteca also recruits in the prison of Juarez. The group, which refers to itself as the Azteca family, compels members to prioritize gang activities above all else, and has a set of sacred rules whose violation is cause for severe punishment and even the death of members and their families. According to the testimony of a jail Barrio Azteca member, serving as a witness in the trial against former leader Arturo Gallegos, group members have received training from Los Zetas in murder, extortion, and security. Some of these trainings took place in Torreon, Coahuila, just south of the border, indicating that the group had expanded its reach in Mexico and strengthened its connections. Barrio Azteca has a hierarchical structure similar to that of the military. A committee of general governs by consensus both inside and outside the prison. Below them are the captains, who control the plazas, which are in turn managed by lieutenants, and the indios, often minors, are used for the local distribution of small amounts of drugs. Additionally, the gang has addressed some tactical mistakes, including adopting older motor vehicles to maintain lower profile and providing better training to its members. The main ally of the Barrio Azteca gang is the Juárez Cartel and its arm wing, La Línea. According to information provided by the International Association of Latin Gang Investigators to Milenio, the group will also be collaborating with the Caborca cartel. Additionally, in the past, Barrio Azteca collaborated with Los Zetas. Although traditionally their main enemies have been the Sinaloa cartel and their allies, Los Mexicles, U.S. authorities point to increased collaboration between new members of the group and the Sinaloan organization. Barrio Azteca has long been involved in drug sales associated with the Juárez Cartel. As Barrio Azteca has gained power, it has established a more direct relationship with the Juárez Cartel and strengthening their alliances. Eduardo Ravelo, the current leader of Los Aztecas, began his criminal career in 2003, facing charges of extortion and numerous charges of conspiracy to distribute drugs. On March 5, 2009, a fierce battle broke out between a rival drug trafficking organization within a prison on the outskirts of Ciudad Juárez. The violence resulted in the death of 20 inmates and 7 others injured. Guards, police, and the Mexican army took more than 3 hours to quell the riots inside the prison. From a distance, family members awaited news as black smoke billowed from the prison and helicopters patrolled above. At one point, prisoners could be seen lighting mattresses on fire and throwing bodies from second-floor windows. The fight, which was between Barrio Azteca and Los Mexicles, erupted around 6 a.m. after the conclusion of a series of conjugal visits. Alongside Los Mexicles were the Artistas Asesinos, a rival gang and executioner of the Sinaloa cartel. The 20 dead were members of Los Mexicles and Artistas Asesinos, indicating that the prison war was instigated by members of the Barrio Azteca group. According to a Los Angeles Times report, members of Barrio Azteca managed to see a prison car case, allowing them to release their allies and unleash chaos in cells controlled by their rival groups. In a relatively low security area within the prison, gang members fashioned knives and forced other guards to release about 150 gun raids. Once they took guards as hostage, Barrio Azteca members entered high-security blocks where rival inmates were held, forcing guards to open cells and proceeding to murder rivals. Some victims were stabbed, others beaten, and some were killed with makeshift weapons. The second massacre linked to Barrio Azteca occurred on the morning of July 26, 2011, where members of Los Aztecas attacked Los Mexicles, a street gang associated with the Sinaloa cartel in a prison in Ciudad Juárez. The attack left 17 dead and 20 injured. Part of the violence was captured by a surveillance camera showing 2 armed men clearing a halfway of guards before opening a door and allowing other armed men to fire inside a room where prisoners died. The violence continued elsewhere in the prison until 2 a.m. the following day. Although there is no audio in the video, the images showed the 2 armed men giving orders to the guards to retreat, and despite being armed, the guards appeared to follow the orders of the gang members without resistance. After their exit, the 2 men opened a different door and let in 4 other accomplices into the hallway. some of them carrying assault rifles. At that moment, the gunmen opened the doors to another room, and that's when the gunfire began. Officials from the state of Chihuahua said they couldn't locate the 5 weapons used in the massacre. However, an AR-15 assault rifle, one of the weapons believed to have been used in the massacre, was confiscated. Initial reports had indicated that the massacre had started as a clash between prison gangs, but the surveillance video shows cold-blooded execution, and that members of the Barrio Azteca gang carry out the shooting without any provocation from their enemies. According to The Guardian, the video suggests that the guards may have allowed the killers to murder the inmates, demonstrating that the prison was plagued by weak control, disorganization, and possible corruption. The reports state that inmates had violated prison rules and held large parties, possibly with the guards' permission. Additionally, the prison was severely overcrowded, with over 2,700 inmates in a facility with a capacity of only 850 prisoners. On January 31, 2010, armed men stormed a party in a small working-class neighborhood known as Villas de Salvarcar in Ciudad Juárez, killing 16 teenagers. Witnesses said cartel members arrived at the crime scene in 7 cars with tinted windows, closed off the streets and blocked the access. They burst into the party and opened fire on the victims. While they were watching a soccer game, some of the teenagers were shot as they tried to flee, and their bodies were found in the neighboring houses. While neighbors hid in their homes, some called emergency services, but the Mexican Army and federal police did not arrive until after the killers had left. When Mexican authorities arrived, a large crowd gathered at the crime scene as neighbors and relatives of the victims, whose ages ranged from 15 to 20 years old, cried and lit candles. They begged for their names not to be disclosed for fear of retaliation from the hitmen. Relatives and witnesses interviewed after the massacre insisted that the teenagers had nothing to do with drug trafficking and worker kids. What was concerning for authorities was that the victims were not gathered inside a bar or a rehabilitation center, but in a private home. They did not give an official statement on the motives of the murders, but the massacre bore all signs of drug violence that Ciudad Juárez had experienced during the early part of the decade. Crime scene photos show a sparsely furnished house with large pool of blood and a smear stain on the walls. Additionally, more than 100 AK-47 shell casings were found at the crime scene. Mexican authorities issued a monetary reward of 1 million pesos to anyone who could provide information leading to the arrest of the killers. The governor of the state of Chihuahua, Jose Reyes Baeza Terrazas, unexpectedly showed up at the funeral to pay his respect to the families. Felipe Calderon, President of Mexico, also visited the relatives and presented a commemorative plaque to the parents of the victims. On March 26, 2010, unknown gunmen from a drug trafficking organization shot and killed a pregnant woman from the United States consulate and her husband in broad daylight in Ciudad Juárez, leaving a baby unharmed. Later that same day, gunmen killed the husband of another consulate worker and wounded her 2 young children. The shootings took place in different locations and was the first fatal attack against U.S. officials and their families by criminal organizations from Mexico. The attack occurred during a violent weekend across Mexico, where nearly 50 people died across the country. The killings angered the White House, which had quietly allowed families of American consulate workers to live across the border in Texas even before they were killed. The weapons used in the attack and the style in which the U.S. officials were murdered pointed to drug traffickers as suspects. Evidence provided by U.S. intelligence and Mexican authorities pointed to Barrio Azteca as the perpetrators. One day after the murders, the U.S. State Department authorized the temporary departure of U.S. consulate workers throughout northern Mexico, including the cities of Tijuana, Nogales, Matamoros, Nuevo Laredo, Monterrey, and Ciudad Juárez. This was not just a response to the incident in Ciudad Juárez, but to drug-related violence along the border. Barrio Azteca leader Arturo Gallegos Castellón, better known by his nickname El Farmero, ordered the execution of 2 U.S. consulate workers and a Mexican link to the agency in Ciudad Juárez. Gallegos attacked U.S. officials because he believed they had granted visas to members of a rival gang, although say it was a case of mistaken identity. According to Reuters, the murders were an ongoing effort by Barrio Azteca to take control of El Paso Juárez drug trafficking corridor. Others had other speculation about the attack. It was unclear whether the consulate worker was singled out for being slow with visas for some cartel members, whether the worker had angered some members inside a Texas prison, whether the attack was intended as a message to the U.S. anti-drug agents, or even it is a mistaken identity. Whatever the reasons, the attack sparked shockwaves and widespread concern about the United States role in Mexico and how American street gangs are rapidly adopting the violent tactics of Mexico drug trafficking organizations and making alliances with them on the other side of the border. On April 5, 2012, authorities concluded that Barrio Azteca murdered the three United States consulate as part of an agreement with Jose Antonio Acosta Hernandez, El Diego, a former Juárez Cartel lieutenant who was in prison after being declared guilty and received a sentence of 10 life sentences on 3 counts of murder, aiding a criminal organization, murder in a foreign country, drug trafficking, organized crime, and conspiracy to launder money. They demand quotas for independent drug traffickers in El Paso, other parts of West Texas, and eastern New Mexico. Once the money is collected, Barrio Azteca members deposit it into the bank accounts of their own incarcerated leaders, often using false names and females associated from bank transfers. Los Aztecas also have a sophisticated communication network where they use coded letters, smuggle mobile phones introduced into prison cells, and distribution of member and target lists to prevent law enforcement from understanding their communication network. Barrio Azteca also created a secret language based on Nahuatl. The locus of power for Barrio Azteca is inside prisons, raising concern that the gang's operational capacity will not be hindered when its leaders are incarcerated. There are also around 500 small gangs working for Barrio Azteca, seeking to earn a spot by joining the big fish. Outside of prison, members will contact incarcerated leaders to verify the status of someone using the Barrio Azteca name to operate and see if they are up to date with the organization. Those who were not in good standing were executed. Their hallmark is the use of violence and fear to control their territory. As is usual with gangs, they have deadly rivalries with other organizations, such as Los Sureños and the New Mexico Syndicate. Barrio Azteca members identify each other through tattoos. They usually contain the letters B and A or the number 21, which correspond to the numerical representation of the gang's initials. Others include the Texas area code 915 and culturally some reference to the Aztec culture. On the streets, they collect a kind of protection money, called a quota or rent. With this money, they pay lawyers and legal needs of members who are detained, and even to send them money inside the prison through the United States Postal Service. Prison does not imply the end for its members. In fact, they continue to work for the gang even while detained. They communicate with letters in Spanish and English, calls, and in-person visits. Today, Barrio Azteca works with La Línea to maintain their heroin trafficking routes to the United States in the face of the threat from another cartel, the Sinaloa cartel, and its arm wing, Gente Nueva. The top leader of the Juárez Cartel, Vicente Carrillo Fuentes, El Viceroy, is serving a 28-year sentence in a prison in Oaxaca, Mexico. From 2004 to 2005, a resident of El Paso named Guadalberto Marquez, also known as Bert, sold approximately 300 to 500 kilograms of cocaine each month with the help of a drug cartel and connections south of the US-Mexico border. However, it was a big surprise for him when a man named Jeff Andes, who was Bert's boss in the cocaine business, showed up at Bert's house with a duffel bag containing over 200 pounds of US cash and simply left. It took Bert 2 whole days to count the money, which amounted to $1.8 million. Bert suddenly found himself in a position that only a small percentage of human beings experience. He loaded the money into flat tires of carrier vehicles and set it south to the notoriously violent border of Chihuahua. If there was any temptation to take the money or run, it was surely dissipated by the fact that Bird and his co-authors in the cocaine business were part of something known as the Barrio Azteca, a gang in Texas that has become synonymous with brutality and death in the world of gangs. Barrio Azteca is something akin to a private army. It is well-funded, backed by the drug trafficking organization of Vicente Carrillo Fuentes, also known as the Juárez Cartel, and its members had found ways to exploit both the Mexican and American legal system to commit murders, kidnappings, and torture with almost total impunity. Until a particularly violent crime in March 2010 changed everything. To give you an idea of this bloody tale of two cities, there are court records obtaining real photos of the crime and the people involved, and track first-hand accounts for numerous sources on all sides of the law, including the leader of a famous assassination squad, who has admitted responsibility for nearly 1,000 murders. We could tell many more stories of how a handful of men managed to organize within the Texas prison system, forming a small group that has evolved into a drug trafficking empire and all that entails, so much so that it has captured the attention of the highest levels of the governments of Mexico and the United States. With this, I bid farewell, but not without inviting you to like and subscribe. Your support is what makes these investigative projects possible. See you in the next video.